you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pikeoff OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.
Good afternoon, Tassie. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. For anyone who's tuning in on Monday morning at 10 a.m., just want to let you all know that Tassie and I are actually recording this on Sunday evening because it's still spring break and we've got some activities that we need to attend tomorrow. So we're not going to be able to do live, but we wanted to have this ready for you guys. So this is a pre-recording. So with that, let's get to it. It seems like this week is shaking out to be a big week. We have a city council meeting on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. and we're really needing everyone to roll out for this because the OTA is back asking city council to approve not one, but 2 agreements to partner with them for 2 different projects on the East-West Connector. So with that, Tassie knows a little bit more than I do, so I'm going to let her go ahead and get us started on that topic. So here we go.
Well, the quickest metaphor I can come up with, and that I've said this before, I'll say it again, that I view OTA's attempt to get these cooperation resolutions from the city as equivalent to a vampire knocking at the door saying, just let me in, I brought you some nice gifts. And the citizens know what's up. And every time the citizens are like, no, do not let the vampires in the house. If you don't let them in, they can't hurt you. But for whatever reason, our city officials are always like, oh, hey, that looks like a nice gift. Come on in. We'll just have a little vote and the whole city will welcome you. So I view this as the city yet again to give the vampires a key to get in and do whatever they want with no accountability, the way that they've done with so many other cities. So even though that these cooperation resolutions look like they have basically gifts for the city, and our city officials really believe this, and I appreciate them, but I feel like they're not getting enough different perspectives, especially regarding the enforceability of the things that OTA says they're going to do to get their way into the city. So my take on it is these cooperation resolutions are still a bad idea, that OTA cannot destroy the city if we don't let them, and that's what these resolutions are designed to do.
Yeah, so just backing up just a minute, the city of Norman passed a resolution back in February or March of 2022 that basically said that the city would not be partnering with the OTA. And it's my understanding that that resolution was actually supposed to direct staff in how to move forward with the OTA or not. And, it does kind of make you wonder, are city staff following those recommendations that the city council put in place? And I could be wrong, but I don't think that those resolutions expire. So I would assume that that one is still in effect and that staff should still be protecting the city instead of trying to partner with the Turnpike Authority.
Right. And what I've heard the city staff say is after the Supreme Court ruling, they viewed that as like, oh, well, we don't have any way to stop this. So come on in, OTA. But we do have a way. We can just say no. All right. That original resolution said no so firmly and convincingly that there was no ambiguity. Yet here we are, the city itself hasn't changed its mind. It's like they're taking the Supreme Court decision, which was a split decision. And we have a new member of the Supreme Court now, like it could go another way. But it's like they're just turning a blind eye to all possible avenues of resistance and sort of like surrendering in advance. I just would want to remind everybody too that like the original Norman resolution said, you must do an environmental study. You must inform the citizens of what the impact of these unwanted highways will be for the watershed, for the environment, for everything. And they have not done that. So at the very least, the city should still put the brakes on and say, you have to give us information about how this will impact the city before we agree to partner with you at any level.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other little piece of insight to the Supreme Court, we have heard that over and over again that, well, the Supreme Court ruled, and so that means the Turnpike Authority can take as property and they can move forward with their project. But I think it's important that we actually stop and clarify what the Supreme Court decision actually means. It does not mean that they have permission to run their project wherever they want. And we have actually already seen that debunked because the Bureau of Reclamation said, no. The court said, yes, you can move your project forward, but the Bureau of Reclamation said, but not here. And we know that that's not the only hurdle in their project. There are other things they have to do. They have to get permission from the Army Corps. They have to get permission for certain things from DEQ. They have to get permission for certain things from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They have to get sign off from the city of Norman. Obviously, otherwise they wouldn't keep coming back to the city and asking to sign an agreement or a resolution to do something with them. So if they could do it all on their own, why wouldn't they? And so I think it's just important that we look at and revisit what the Supreme Court decision actually says and what it does and what it doesn't do. All it did was give the Turnpike Authority permission to issue bonds. That's it. That's all it did. It didn't say you can go into Norman and take as many houses as you want. That's not what it said. It didn't say, City of Norman, you have to partner with the OTA. That's not what it said.
It didn't say you're exempt from any environmental studies. It didn't say you can be a complete jerk to the city and not give them any vote on where these roads are supposed to go, right? So for whatever reason, the Supreme Court gave them this much, but the city of Norman seems to be determined to just keep giving things away with the assumption, and again, OTA has promised them, some extras, some bennies. But as we know from past construction projects, those don't always materialize. And sometimes they do damage that they won't remediate. And so there's been absolutely no ability to assess whether these hypothetical benefits outweigh the very real, painful, destructive costs of these projects.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's one of the reasons that we have been talking with council in the past and would like to continue to talk with them is that what we have seen in the past from other, Oklahoma County, the city of Hera, landowners who are abutting turnpike projects, or turnpikes after a new project has come through, they all have issues with the Turnpike Authority following through on agreements that they had. So even if they have a contractual agreement that's signed by both parties, we're seeing that all of these different entities have to file a lawsuit and ask the court to compel the Turnpike Authority to follow through on what they're supposed to do. So, all the more reason we should make sure that our council understands that there are serious risks involved with moving forward with any kind of partnership with the Turnpike Authority, because just because you have a signed agreement doesn't mean, one, that they're going to not try to amend it later, and two, that even if they don't amend it, that they're going to follow through and that you're not going to have to take them to court to get them to do what they say they're going to do. So definitely want to keep that in the forefront. But even more so, something that's interesting to me with this particular agreement is that it involves the 36th Avenue widening project. And so OTA is saying, hey, we're going to stop working on our project for now on the East-West Connector, and we want to partner with the city for, with this 36th Avenue widening project that has been in the works for like a decade now. And so they're kind of sort of mixing things up a little bit, saying something about, we won't have to take an extra house if we can partner with you, and then we can kind of combine our projects together. Let's be a team. But Tassie, maybe you can fill us in a little bit more of the details of this.
Well, I wish I could, but the details are murky. There are different documents that contradict each other. Some of the most important information is not available in the documents that we've been able to find. So I think in the agenda, the city council agenda, they say that this 36th Avenue project was approved by voters in 2012 as a bond issue. But I pulled the bond document, and it was, at that point, I think it was $5 million in the bond document for a totally unspecified street widening. There were no details, there were no budget in that document. Then we found some other documents that had some of that information, but because the original plan was made so long ago, like all the budget figures have really changed, but then there was no justification. So it's really unclear exactly who made the plan for 36th Avenue, where the funding's coming from, because again, voters approved a bond issue for, I think, $12 million, but now the project budget is over $20 million. So all of the different financing pieces have never been fully explained to citizens, and citizens definitely did not vote on what they're planning to do right now for, at this price point. So I really feel like the city has not done a good job of communicating exactly what this project is, how it will be financed, all the different pots of money that are being accessed, and why it's changed so much from the original 2012 plan that voters just approved the bonds, not the plan. The plan was made separately, and those documents are not together. So it just, in my mind, is a failure of the city to fully communicate what they're asking about this 36th Avenue project, why the OTA is involved at all. And at the very least, I really feel like the best option would be to postpone all of this turnpike business. It feels rushed, it feels incomplete, it feels haphazard, and it feels, with all those things together, it feels a little sneaky, even though it might not be. It could just be confusing, just that it raises all these questions that are not going to be answerable in a city council meeting. So I think it should be postponed.
I think so too. And let's just talk a little bit more about some of that confusion. Let's dig into that. So part of the confusion comes from, I believe this document was produced by the city staff. I'm trying to catch council up to speed back in 2024 when the Turnpike Authority first came in. I might need to double check that, so I'll add that later. But you can see right here in the third paragraph, it says the project design is on hold at 90% completion, awaiting funding. All utility relocations and right-of-way acquisitions are complete. So the city of Norman, as of 2024, had already completed all of the right-of-way acquisitions. They were already finished. And so why am I bringing that up? Well, let's look back over at the agreement that the Turnpike Authority has sent to the council. And it says something just a little bit interesting in here. Right here on this slide right here. Let's look at that second line. It says 36th right-of-way and utility relocation. The city is on the hook for $2 million. But we already purchased all of the right-of-way. So why would we need to be on the hook for that? And so I did a little bit of my due diligence to check to see, well, maybe they didn't actually purchase all of it. Maybe they just got some of it. And well, I was actually able to pull up the warranty deeds, and in most cases, yeah, they've actually already purchased the right-of-way from the landowners. And you can see this document was attached to a city council agenda back in 2020, I believe it was. And I think the date on here is 2019. And they give a rundown of right-of-way right here. You can see it says that as of whatever this date in 2019 is, they had already spent over $1 million on right-of-way acquisition. So, and I also found condemnation documentation in OSCN showing that a few other landowners have actually been to condemnation with the city over, right-of-way for this project. So it just begs the question, and why is the city on the hook for another $2 million worth of right-of-way acquisition when we have documentation from the city's own documents saying that they've already purchased all of it. And supposedly, the reason the council or the city staff found this agreement to be interesting and worthwhile and of looking into and bringing before council was because they were told that if the OTA was able to partner with the city on this, they could use the existing right of way that the city has already purchased, and they wouldn't need to take anybody else's house. They wouldn't need to take any more property from any landowners to implement the water runoff. And the city said, okay, well, what happens if we don't, And the OTA said, well, then we're going to have to use our own plans. And that is actually going to mean that we're going to have to take someone's house so that, we can do our stuff. Well, so let's back up again. And they're acknowledging that they can do their work within this, what the city has already purchased. So why do we need to purchase more when they're trying to say that's the reason we should partner with them, is so that they don't have to take more, but yet we're on the hook for more?
I'm telling you, it's a vampire at the door saying, I brought you a present, and if you let me in, it won't, it will turn into something good for you, where everybody in the audience knows it's not a real present. And what you've just said really highlights that, right? Like, they didn't even make their fake present in a convincing package because all of this other documentation sort of shows that what they're saying doesn't make sense.
It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. This is going to show my age, but I just remember there was always this fear of like children being lured by people who are going to kidnap them. And so they, I always had this vision of like a white van driving by, and my parents were like, Kelly, there's no puppy in there. So when they come and tell you, hey, come look at my puppy over here in this van, you don't follow them because there's not a puppy in there. And I feel like that's what we need to explain to the city staff, is that there's no puppy in that van. Okay. The OTA doesn't have a puppy in there for you.
Yeah, it's something very bad. It's not a puppy.
They don't have good intentions, and you need to be wary of what they're coming to you with, because you can't take them at face value. And we know that. We've actually spoken with the Turnpike Authority over the last issue that they brought to council, and, they were promising all kinds of things, man-made wetlands and sidewalks and biking paths and trails and all of this stuff, and the frontage roads and all that. And they made it sound to city staff that, oh, hey, we're going to do all of this for you for free. You're not going to pay for anything. And let me back up for just a second on that too. Perhaps that's not what the Turnpike Authority was telling staff, but that is the message staff was relaying to council. So somewhere along the way, that message was getting tweaked. And I'm not sure if it was the Turnpike Authority misrepresenting to staff or the staff misrepresenting to council. But what council was presented with was this was going to be free. But what we find out later is the Turnpike Authority says, well, no, actually, we had never discussed who was going to pay for what. We just said we'd be open to working with you guys on that stuff. So, but that's not, if anybody remembers back to what they said, I might need to try to find a clip of that and see if I can include it in this, but I'm pretty sure that's not what they presented to city staff. They said, oh, we got to do this right now because we're at 60% design, and we need to start getting that right away so that we can incorporate all these things that you want us to do into these plans, and we'll do it all for you for free. So
exactly. And it's also worth pointing out that all of the promises that they make, again, these benefits are purely hypothetical. There's no way to enforce, or they'll make you spend so much on lawyers to enforce an agreement. So those potential benefits are very likely going to stay imaginary, whereas the costs, the displaced families, the harm to the environment, the wreckage of the city's infrastructure, just the complete mess that they're going to make trying to build an unwanted loop around the city, that will only get worse going forward. You will have to pay for this big mistake for the rest of your life in Norman because it's so uncost effective, it's so ginormous, it's so poorly planned there's no way it's going to have a good outcome. I just don't see anything good coming from giving them even a millimeter of territory inside the city limits.
I agree. And to speak to that just a little bit more, something I've been thinking about is the fact that when the city has a land use and transportation plan. Okay. And so certain areas of the city are zoned for this type of development and other areas of the city are zoned for this type of development. And if you come along and you purchase some property in one of these zoned areas and you want to do something different with it than what it is currently zoned for, you have to apply and go before the City of Norman's Planning Commission and explain your case. You have to say, look, this is what we have planned. This is why we think we should be exempt from this. And there are a couple of different hearings. Like there's not just one. And in that process, the neighbors within a certain distance of this parcel are actually formally notified by the city and given a rundown of the project. And they have an opportunity to submit a protest. And not only do they get an opportunity to do that in writing, but they can also show up to the meetings and they can protest in person and they will be heard. And there's not like a time limit like there is like when you're speaking at city council for public comment. As far as I know, I don't think there is a time limit on it. It's much more of an open discussion with the planning commission. And so and the reason for that is important because when the city lays out this land use and transportation plan, it kind of is a document that guides the development for the city. And so if you're wanting to relocate and live in this area, you can be fairly certain that this is what the character is going to be like in the area that you choose to live. And so then we have the Turnpike Authority come through, and obviously the majority of the area in which these new routes are going to go, they're going to drastically change the character of the area. And now we have city staff wanting to partner with the OTA on some of these projects with these new alignments. And yet the citizens, even the ones that are within that close radius that would have been notified for a big change like this, for something the city was wanting to do, or another citizen or landowner within the city was wanting to do, but there's no mechanism for public comment or notification or input about whether these citizens want the city to partner with the OTA on this massive changing of character due to the project. And so I feel like that's just really something that's missing in this whole thing, is this lack of public input. And why can I, as a citizen, not have the opportunity to come and say, no, city, I don't want you to partner with the OTA because that project is going to take it from what it was supposed to be to something that is completely different that I don't agree with.
Exactly. And it bothers me too, because there's the gaslighting that happens after citizens are excluded. So for instance, if we go back to our this project summary, status summary document, it says in the background, of the 8 projects voted on by the citizens, the 36th Avenue widening, blah, blah, blah. 8 projects were not voted on by the citizens. Bond issues were voted on by the citizens, but they included no project descriptions. I have a list here. And all it says is, $20 million general obligation bonds for various street reconstruction projects. The bond documents say that. So citizens voted for this bond issue at this amount, but they did not vote for this project and should be given an opportunity to say, especially when it's tied now to a highway, massively disrupting unwanted highway, they should absolutely be given an opportunity to still say no. So I think that you're absolutely right. Citizens have been excluded, and then documents like this make it sound like everything was done appropriately. But in actuality, I think, having been in this process from day one, we both know that even the OTA's public comment was after the fact and kind of a sad joke. And so I feel like that model that they use is just kind of metastasizing out. And it's just becoming the MO of everybody that they work with. It's very destructive to democracy. It creates cynicism and just really a lot of anger in the community. Like, democratic societies aren't supposed to work like this. And like even the TIF vote, I mean, again, that lawsuit, that referendum, that was just to have a vote for citizens to say what happens to their tax dollars. And to have the Supreme Court be like, no, technicality, you don't get to have a vote. It all just feels like it's kind of mixed in together as these anti-democratic impulses to keep citizens quiet. So that's why we want everybody to go to the city council meeting on Tuesday, speak your mind, be heard, tell the city that they need to listen to citizens, not the OTA, not real estate developers, and not city staff who may not be getting the right information.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely something I'm going to talk about in public comment, is that, in my opinion, the way this is rolling out is that staff apparently have been working on this for 6-8 months or something with the Turnpike Authority, but it was never brought to the public's attention. And so if instead they wait until they have an agreement and the city staff have already done all of the quote unquote negotiating, reminding you that the city's resolution from 2022 told staff not to negotiate with the OTA. It didn't say you have the ability to do
Until
that.
they have done the environmental studies, until they show that they're serious about communicating, it's on them to say how this will impact the city. And then it's on the city to say, we are or are not okay with that. And none of that has happened. It's like, well, we're going to skip straight ahead and start construction and start grabbing property as soon as we can. And we'll just forget all those other things we promised you. So why would anybody think that this time would be different? I do not expect them to make good on anything that they're promising. Their track record is too bad in all of these other projects. So it's still a hard no for me.
Yeah, still a hard no for me too. And so they've been working on this for like 8 or 9 months, and then they get all this negotiating done, but they haven't taken any input from the public about whether or not we like what they have negotiated. And then they wrap it all up and they put it in an agenda on a Friday. And then the citizens have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to look at it and go, what is this? And did you think about this? Did you think about that? How did you come to these conclusions? And so again, if we had not been cut out of the conversation, over the past 9 or 10 months, then, I think things would we would at least feel a little bit better about it. Instead, this results in the citizens going, whoa, pump the brakes. Council, please don't vote on this. We need time to vet it. And so it really puts council in a bad situation, because they know that staff have done all this work, and they also don't want the citizens to not have had a chance to look through everything. And so it just puts council in a bad spot, and we shouldn't be doing that, because council's there. They have a lot of other things to do, and I don't know. So I'm going to ask council to come up with a way to let the citizens be part of that process before it's brought to council for a vote. There needs to be some sort of public comment, or the public needs to be aware. Yeah, an oversight committee, just kind of like with the TIF district. And really, if you think about it, anytime we have a big project with the city, like with the TIF or AIM Norman or whatever, they usually do a citizens oversight committee, because it's a big project and it affects everybody in the city. And the same thing is going to happen with this OTA project. If those routes go through, the city of Norman citizens are going to be paying out the wazoo for maintenance of all of these cars that are going to be damaging our existing roads, that normally wouldn't be seeing that type of damage because we wouldn't have that influx of traffic. And it's forever going to change our city in some seriously big ways. And so why in the world would we not want to make sure that city staff and city council aren't missing anything as they move forward with these negotiations? And that's the purpose of an oversight committee. So I just think that's something we should push for.
I just feel like this current model is so inefficient, because city council doesn't get paid, but this meeting is going to go really long, and that makes everybody grumpy and irritable. It's not an efficient or effective way to do business, right? Like, this public input should not be happening at the end. It should have happened at the beginning. That way people who felt strongly could, come and voice their opinions. They could have input into the planning process or negotiations. And then there's not this need to sort of have a big argument into the wee hours of the morning, right? It just feels like it's not a good use of anybody's time to have to spend this many hours, this many person hours, for something that should never have got to this state in the first place.
Yeah, they always push it to the last minute, and then it leaves everybody scrambling, and that's very disrespectful to our city council members. You know, they work very hard for us on a lot of different topics and issues that come before them. So, yeah, I would love to see them implement something like that. So that's what I'm going to talk about at council on Tuesday. So that's something else that we need to make clear.
I'm going to talk about vampires.
Oh, I can't wait for this. So I would just like to encourage everyone to please show up to council meeting at 6:30 on Tuesday night, March the 24th. Please sign up. You can sign up online at the city's website. And I believe if you're going to do it online, you have to have signed up before 4 p.m. Maybe it's 5, but for some reason I'm thinking it's 4 p.m. Otherwise, you can sign up when you get there. And I think I've also heard that Stephen Tyler Holman, our mayor, our wonderful mayor, has even made it an issue that, or a policy that as long as you're there, if you want to speak, even if you didn't sign up, then you can. Now, that's not official. That's just something I've heard. So don't count on it. Definitely go ahead and sign up. You can sign up for each one of the agenda items, which I believe agenda item number 31, agenda item number 32, and then you can also sign up for general comment or open comment, whatever it is, at the very end. So, you know, there's at least 3 opportunities. And as if these 2 Turnpike agenda items weren't big enough, there's also an agenda item on the TIF. So I don't know as much about that one as I do about the OTA ones. So Tassie, do you want to fill everybody in a little bit on what's going on there?
My knowledge is very basic, but it sounds like it's an agenda item to repeal the vote in support of the TIF. Or the ordinance, or I'm probably garbling this horribly, but it sort of undoes the action that was done to make that go forward. Or so this vote would be to undo the moving forward with the TIF, which is legal, according to Rob Norman. I know he's been working very hard, just sort of researching all the legalities of this. And it just makes it still possible to have it put to a vote of the people. And again, which does not seem like a big ask. It is not an unreasonable ask. Should have been at the beginning, not months later after all these, hoops have been jumped through. And anyway, so I'm hopeful that there's enough momentum in the community, enough people sign that petition just to say, please, yes, let us vote. That people will turn up and say again, one more time for the people in the back, let us vote. Like, it's not controversial. It should not be a big ask. It just repeals what they already passed and said, let's have a vote.
Yeah, very good. So in some ways, I feel like we're kind of lucky that it's all going on one night. So show up, wear your red shirt, and be ready to speak. And just let council know that it's not fair that we don't get to have any input in this, especially when we voted to allow the city to issue bonds to pay for this project. And then now it's changing. And also, they're wrapping in some of this federal money into it. And
there needs to be full disclosure and a lot of eyes need to be on this. And just the fact that Kelly, in like half an hour, you found this big $1 million discrepancy or whatever, right? Like, people need answers before anything like this gets voted on. And all the urgency is on the OTA side. It is not on the city side. Like, we are not in a hurry to have our town destroyed by unwanted highways. So we can take our time.
Yeah, and it's something else I hope goes on record tomorrow or on Tuesday when they do this vote, is that supposedly the city council was told that if they follow the OTA's plan or they sign this agreement or whatever, that they're not going to have to take this one person's house. That was going to save one house. And so I just like to see that on record, that if this is the reason that council decides to go ahead and sign that resolution anyways, or this agreement, that they will then pledge to also, as they move forward, say, no, we are not going to do whatever it is the OTA is wanting to do if it's going to result in the loss of anyone's property. Because if they're willing to do it for this one landowner, then they need to follow throughout the rest of the project and say, nope, no man-made wetlands, because it's going to take an extra 13 houses. No sidewalks and bike paths along the frontage roads, because it's going to take 13 more houses. So let's fight for those houses, just like we're fighting for this one. And
Exactly.
we should fight for them. Although I'd kind of like to call the OTA's bluff on whether or not they're really going to take that house, because I think that's what they do. They like to pull the strings. Again, there's no puppy in that van. It's misrepresented.
I will say too, I also want to say, like, I really like our mayor. I know there's some very talented, dedicated, very hardworking people on the city council. So we've always kind of been a group that's like, speak honestly, but be respectful. I don't feel the need to have, a big angry crowd, but I do feel the need to have a big honest crowd. So bring your honesty, bring your integrity, thank the people for the work they've done, but just, maybe emphasize that they need to acquire more information before any of this moves forward. And hopefully we can build a better infrastructure just to sort of monitor these things as they're happening and get citizen input, so that there isn't this sort of last minute frustrating crush that's probably going to happen on Tuesday.
Exactly. So this is not a protest. This is not a demonstration. This is the citizens rolling out and letting council know that we need them to do their due diligence, and we need more information on this before we move forward, a little bit more clarity. So anyhow, with that, I think, Tassie, we're done with this topic.
Thank everybody for watching, and please keep tuning in. Like, things are just happening fast. So we try to get information out on all the channels. So keep watching.
Yep. All right. And with that, until next time, we'll see you guys around.
Thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pike-Off OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.